Okay, let's get some lessons from the shepherds, okay? Number one, God picked nameless shepherds. Did you notice there aren't any names? They didn't post this. Nobody knows about it. God picked them, and He never even tells us their names. And the reason we know, and this is such a special story, is because God picked them and did all this and forever recorded in heaven what they did. Now, God's recorded everything that everybody has done. And all of the bad things we've done, He's erased. And all the good things that we have done for His glory and in His name, like giving cups of cold water and serving in the dining hall and doing children's ministry and everything else we do in His name, He never forgets. But number one, God picked nameless shepherds. Number two, often God wants us to do something that only He really sees and what only a few others barely witness. Did you know just the shepherds got this event? They couldn't even have filmed it. It probably would have blasted their, to have the angels from eternity, it probably would have burned out even the 12.4 megapixel camera in the iPhone 7, It's amazing. They couldn't capture this. They were awestruck. But sometimes God wants us to do something for Him that probably nobody else knows about but God. And you know what? Those are the ones that we never lose our reward for. Because when we get credit for it, and when we have the wing named after us, and when we have a placard put down, and when we wait until we're recognized, or whatever pride prompts us to do, Jesus said, you have your reward, the plaque, which will get lost. I remember John MacArthur saying when he went to college, he was such a good sports player, he was first or second on almost all of those things that high schools used to have on the walls in colleges, the record holders, first, second, third in their time or their distance or whatever. And he says that when he graduated, he was all the way around the athletic hall. He was so famous. And when he came back for his 5-year reunion, he noticed somebody had unseated him a couple of places. When he came back for the 10-year reunion, he noticed that a lot of people had unseated him. And on his 20th reunion, the college was defunct. All those records were gone. You have your reward when everybody sees it. But when no one sees it but God, you never lose your reward. You ought to be thankful if you're doing something nobody knows about. If you're doing something that is unappreciated, unrecognized, costly, kind of like putting a widow's mite in an offering, when everybody else is dumping buckets in and clanging, and you put in something that doesn't even make any sound, and nobody even knew you gave anything, the Lord said, if only I see it, and you don't get any credit for it, then you never lose your reward. And then the last thing about the shepherds, these are great lessons. God picked nameless shepherds, and God wants us to do something only He really sees. Finally, when God uses us to do His plan, even if what we did is not seen or ever known by many on earth, God remembers what we do. Did you know that's the bottom line? It says, humble yourself in the sight of the Lord. I mean, when we used to live in Los Angeles, there was this well-meaning believer that walked around with sandwich boards. You know what that is? Like a half of a sheet of plywood on the front of you and a half of the sheet of plywood on the back of you and a rope holding it over your shoulders. And they walked up and down the street. And one side said, the world is ending, and the other one says, you're going to hell. And that was their Los Angeles ministry. And everybody knew them in that way. And you know what? That's great. And that is one way to serve the Lord. But for most of us, God wants us to do something that is not seen and most will not know on earth, but that God will remember. And I wondered this morning at Camp Barrackhill, life is fleeting by so fast. I mean, I remember right after this building was built. I remember when all the rest of the stuff wasn't here. I remember when Uncle John used to sleep up in the Big Chiefs, up in the old, whatever it's called. And I remember when there wasn't even an east side, when it used to be the teepee camp. And I remember all that stuff. And it's amazing how fast time goes by. As I walked around the lake, I could remember being 3 years old and running away from my mom and going all the way around the lake shore. I could do it. And I remember all that stuff, and it seems like just yesterday. Time is going by very fast. What are you doing that God remembers? I don't know if he's going to remember your Facebook post unless they're somehow pointing to him instead of to you. See, so much of our life points to us. Our collections, our hobbies, our pursuits, our athletics, our media, our entertainment, it's all me. And God only will remember forever what's pointed at him. And he says, I want you to choose to point your life toward me. And the shepherds are such an example of that.